Hi, in this video we are going to talk about your album cover. So to start out with, we are going to create our document. So I've made mine here, but I'll go ahead and make another one just so you can see what that's going to look like. In Photoshop, you just need to go to File and New. And when that dialog box pops up, what we are going to type in here is 4.75 inches in width and height, resolution 300, color mode RGB. Hit create. Again, make sure that you check your unit of measurement to see that it's set up as inches. And there we go. So I made a square, right? So my square is 4.75 inches in both directions. Now to get started, I would place my image into my document. So I'll go ahead and go to File, Place Image. And you can see what my album cover is going to look like. I did a Linkin Park album cover, but I organized all my pictures that I took into this folder that says Use These. So I will grab here one of my images that I took, and these are all me. I have to actually Photoshop them together into one document. So I took pictures of myself separately for each of the figures, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so the image of me has been placed. I'll go ahead and hit that check mark, and there is my first one. My computer is running super slow today for some reason. It probably needs to get restarted. But here is where I will end up. Okay, so this is more or less my finished version. I need to come in and fix a couple of things, but this is where I'm going with it. I took each of these photos separately. So I will create a selection. I put them together. I masked out the backgrounds, and then I added the text. And my text is not very well done yet, but I would fix that before I submitted it if I were you. Okay, so again, I took a bunch of photos separately. So here is one of my photos. I want to mask out the background but keep the image, or the figure, sorry. So I can use my lasso tool or whatever tool I need to, and we have covered all of those in other projects. So I'm going to create a selection using my magnetic lasso tool, and it does an okay job, but it's not going to be perfect. I can tell you that already. I already missed a little chunk of the floor that I need to mask out. Okay, so there's my selection. Once I have my selection made, I can just hit my mask button right down here at the bottom of my layers panel, and then it should mask out everything I need it to. If I need to clean up that mask, all I need to do is use my paintbrush tool, and I need to actually go back because I was using some fun watercolor paintbrushes, but I need to go back in. I will size down my paintbrush and make it harder. So I'm pressing the left bracket key on my keyboard to make it smaller. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Again, left bracket key to make that just a little bit smaller. I'm using a black paintbrush on my layer mask. You can see my mask right here. I'm working on this part of it, and I can tell because there's that white outline. See, the white outline switches to the image part. I want it to be on the mask when I'm editing the mask. Okay, so I can come back in and mask out the rest of the floor. And again, I'm not going to do a super good job because I don't want you to have to sit and wait for me while I do that. That looks really weird, but hey, I'll fix that later. Okay, so there is my image. I need to rotate it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control T on my keyboard and rotate my image until I am straight up and down. So I'm just looking for that curved cursor with the arrows, and that means that I'm rotating my image. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit this check mark right up here, and that kind of accepts my changes. Okay, so there's step one. I would go in and place in my background layer, and I actually merged a couple of different images together for my background, and these are all images that I took myself. So I did not take any of these photos from just the internet. I didn't do a Google image search for any of these. The only thing that I did a Google image search for was my inspiration album cover, because obviously you needed to turn that in too, right? But I did not take anybody else's images and use those in my album cover here. So there we go. Part of my background image is placed. It's not big enough, so I will I'll Control T that, free transform it, and holding down the Shift key, pulling from a corner, I will increase the size of it. And there's a delay on my computer today that's really kind of driving me crazy. So I will go ahead and get it about like that. It's about the right size. And now I can go ahead and drag my image of the figure up above that and move that around. Any adjustments that I need to make, I can make those. If I need to turn it black and white, I can. If I want just my figure to be black and white and not my background, I would press and hold the Alt key on my keyboard until I get this cursor change right here. You can see mine with that black arrow and the white box. I'd click right in between those two layers, and then that clips that black and white adjustment layer, it clips that to my image layer. So this is the layer that contains my figure. This is my adjustment layer, and I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. And this is my adjustment layer that's turning it black and white. I have that clipped, and I can see that that's clipped from this little arrow here. So that adjustment layer is clipped to that image layer. I could undo that clipping, and I could actually clip it to the layer below that. So my background layer. I could move that around if I need to, but I need it the other way. So I'm going to undo what I just did. So I'm hitting Control, Alt, and Z all at the same time, and that steps back more than one step. If you hit Control Z, that steps back one step. Control Alt Z will go back more than one step. Just FYI, it's a good keyboard shortcut to use. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to place all of my images in here, and then I will be ready to add my text. Okay, so here we are. I have my album cover created. So this is the original that I was trying to recreate. This is a Linkin Park album cover. So I took 6 different photos of myself in each of these poses, and I photoshopped them together. I masked out the backgrounds, and there they are. So here is my version. Again, it's pretty close to the original. I feel like I had to do a little bit of editing of the sky and some of the color tones and stuff like that. My masking of my figures is not perfect, but I could come back in and clean that up. But I just wanted to show you kind of where we're going with this. So essentially, once I finish touching everything up, the last thing that I need to add is my text. So as you can see on my original, it's Linkin Park Minutes to Midnight. So I am not going to just steal their text. I'm again going to make my own version of it. So I will title mine Mrs. Horner. And I need to change my font or my typeface. So theirs is pretty basic, honestly. Let me go back. Theirs is all caps, and it's a pretty basic font. So I am trying to recreate as accurately as possible kind of the overall look and feel to my text as well as the image. So I'm going to come up here to my window, and I'll find my character panel. I'll open that up, and it looks like it's stretched a little bit. So I'm going to pull that down so that I am not stretching my text in either way. I need to make it all caps, so an easy way to do that is to just hit that all caps button. Let's see, I'm going to take out that period because I don't want that in there for some reason. I like it better without. And then I am going to add my album name. So theirs is Minutes to Midnight. I'm going to have Countdown to Lunch because I like lunch. Okay. Oops, that layer is that too? Oh, I thought it was below my background layer, but it is not. So I'm going to go ahead and size that down. I just double click on that text layer, make it to about the size I want, change the color of it. I can grab that color from right here or in a couple other spots. And there it is. I'm going to go refer back to my original, and I probably need to size that down a little bit. So both my Mrs. Horner and my Countdown to Lunch text needs to get, whoops. Okay, so both of those need to get smaller. So I'm selecting both of them at the same time. They're both highlighted. I clicked Shift and clicked, I'll show you from the start instead of trying to explain. Okay, so here in the Layers panel, I'm clicking on one instance of the text, so I'm clicking on that Countdown to Lunch. I also, at the same time, want to resize my Mrs. Horner text. So I'm going to click on that layer, and now I have them both highlighted. That means they're both selected, and I can edit them both together. So I'll hit Control-T on my keyboard, and I can pull that down and resize it. That's one way to resize text. Of course, I could double click on this little T right here, or it's actually kind of a big T, and then I could come up here to my options bar and pull the size up a little bit. And again, Photoshop has these handy sliders in here so that it doesn't look like there's a slider in there, but I can just click and drag right here where these two little T's are, and I can resize that. So I can go to the right to make it bigger, to the left to make it smaller. And there it is. I'll compare it to my original again. I think I need to make that text black, and then other than that, I might be set. So I will make my Mrs. Horner text black like the original. So again, you are trying to recreate the original as closely as possible with all of your own images and your own information. You don't want to copy the album title or the group name. You don't want to copy that from the original. You want to make up your own information. It should kind of emulate theirs, and it should give a sort of a nod to the original, but you don't want to copy it. So like I said, I mean, theirs is minutes to midnight, so it sounds like they're counting down to something. So I'm counting down to lunch, which is important to me in my life. Okay. All right, that is it. There are a lot of things that you can do in this project, and I don't want to show you all of them because you'd hate to sit through hours and hours of video on this, but go ahead, experiment. If you have questions on specific things, let me know. We could talk about them individually, or if there's something that I need to cover in a video, I can always do that too. One thing that I would say you'll probably run into, you might need to use your gradient tool. I've noticed that a lot in my face-to-face classes, as well as for my online students, is the gradient tool has come into play a lot of times for these album covers. For whatever reason, it must be the way they design them. So your gradient tool lives right with your paint bucket. Okay, so your gradient tool is there. It pulls in the color from your foreground and background colors, but you can also edit your gradients. And we'll actually talk about this stuff a little bit farther along down in the class. So you might not know exactly how to control all of these options, but you can play with it, right? So you have options here. So if you want to just have a gradient that goes from the foreground color to nothing or transparent, you can click that, and that will create I need to make a layer to put it on. The way I have it set up right now, it'll create a linear gradient, and that is linear gradient. I'm going to undo that, so I'll hit Control Z on my keyboard. I can make a radial gradient where it comes out from a center point. Okay, so all of those are kind of at my disposal. I think my original image kind of had a gradient over to the left, but I would want to definitely put that below my text because that's how my original looked. Keep that in mind. You're trying to emulate the original as closely as possible. Okay, so I'm going to add that in there a little bit, maybe pull down the opacity. Again, experiment and do your best in trying to emulate that original image. But of course, again, using all of your own images and your own text. All right, let me know if you have questions, and good luck.